Hi, I'm Daniel Miners, Developer Relations here at Snowflake, and this is another episode of Behind the Data Cloud. Welcome to Behind the Data Cloud. My name is Daniel Miners, Developer Relations here at Snowflake. Today, I'm interviewing Mike Taveirne. So for those that are not familiar with DataRobot, can you explain a little bit what does DataRobot do? And you mentioned that you're an AI engineer there. What does an AI engineer do at
Sure. So DataRobot is an automated machine learning platform. So if you are a data scientist and you know all the math, you've got the skills, it helps accelerate your workload. So in the amount of time you might be able to hand code 10 experiments now and deploy one model, with DataRobot, you could try 100 different experiments, maybe deploy 10 models. So it's really a supercharged productivity tool for those people who are already familiar, have this skill set. If you're someone new to machine learning, or you're like a business analyst, it also kind of democratizes that for these people as well, where you can come, if you understand the requirements for providing a basic data set for a machine learning problem. Essentially, we've got some history, we've got a target, something we're trying to predict. Could be, is someone going to pay a loan back or not? Here's the last 30 days of sales. What will the next 7 days be? You can do this on a store level, on a SKU level, etc. It's a tool and platform that allows you to create those models, even if you don't have those super data scientist skills, and take that model, deploy it, store new data through it, and get a lot of value out of it. And we just make that whole process simple and easy to use, and it's a great partner with the Snowflake platform.
So that's awesome. That's awesome. So it really seems like it accelerates the time to being able to answer business relevant questions with your data.
Yeah, it really accelerates the whole process end to end of building, evaluating that model, deploying, and eventually scoring new data through that model. And I really like the tech stack. These are really my two favorite technology companies. Snowflake is, best in class data warehousing tool, and we're a best in class automated machine learning tool. We're really credited for creating this category in the environment. So it's great. If I've got a new problem I'm working on, these are my go-to platforms to get some data in somewhere, start working with it, and then build some models with it, predict some things.
That's awesome. So when you are building data intensive applications, for your customers or advising them, what are some of the strategies that you use when doing that?
Yeah, so I'll look at the type of data that's coming in and the volume of that data, right? If it's simple CSV files and it's small, you can kind of get away with a lot of different technologies there. But it's a little bit trickier, like JSON data, and it's a large volume. Then you start looking at something that will handle that more elegantly. So, it's not a traditional database. That's something where maybe you would use Python in the past, or some programming language to start working with that data. One of the nice native things with Snowflake is how well it handles JSON data, for example. So it's really nice to be able to bring that in. Flexible schema. I've definitely done a project where I was bringing MongoDB data in and just landed it into a staging area. And it's always going to sit there, but then I'm going to pick it apart, put it on my presentation layer to actually start doing reporting and analytics on it. And it was really nice to have that flexibility, just always land data here, structure it, put in my presentation layer. I could even code up my ETL, which was Python at the time, to kind of dynamically react and see, did anything change in here? Do I need to structure some more? I can go ahead and code that in. And even if I don't put on the presentation layer, since it always landed on the stage, I can just keep it there kind of forever. So definitely those are big factors that make me look at different technical stacks and things available. And there's a lot of tools where in the past I might have said, oh, put that on Hadoop or use Spark. Now I use Snowflake because it is flexible enough to handle something like that, less structured data, and it's a ton easier to use.
So when you are looking at your ETL tool and your ETL pipeline, what are your preferred tools when doing something like that?
So I'm pretty open to that. I played a little with Matillion, but I kind of hand coded my own things in there at the time. What I'd be looking for in general, whether it's a tool that does it for me. So some of these GUI tools will nicely do work for you. And then, alternatively, I'm actually programming the SQL dynamically with stored procedures or with Python or something. What I'm really looking for is less of an ETL and more of an ELT, where I can just load the data and then push the transforms into the system, right? Because Snowflake is going to be larger and more scalable on this stuff than my ETL environment. If I'm also working with data that's already on the database, there's no reason to pull it out into an ETL environment and do stuff and write it back. I'll just have everything be done in the database. So just as a general guiding principle there, it's do as much as I can in the database with SQL.
So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, how do you end up using Snowflake? What are the most common use cases that you use Snowflake for today?
Yeah, so I use it in a little bit different ways. I could tell you a few different ways I've used in the past and use today. So I worked prior to a consulting company, Inspire 11, based out of Chicago. We brought Snowflake to a customer for a starter data warehouse. I think it's pretty perfect for that. You can separate the compute from the storage, so you can start small, you can grow into it. And it's great to have a cloud native tool that is natively working with all these other technologies that people are adopting, but just to simply work with S3 and all these other pieces that natively combine with S3, it's nice integration versus kind of traditional or hybrid architectures where people are moving things a lot more around between local components, cloud components. It still works well with this, but it was nice to say, greenfield opportunity here. What do we get to do? And advise, this is the best platform to start something new on. I have a really tough time recommending another database or something like that kind of use case. So really enjoyed using it there. Customers really happy too. They hadn't heard of it at the time, started using it and really enjoyed it. So that's my first kind of professional usage with it. I played with it before because, like I mentioned, I was a Netezza sales engineer. So just even seeing a new database, just here's how it worked. What's the architecture look like? How does it actually scale? How do they solve these problems, which we traditionally had on-premise systems? And it was really fun to learn how it worked because it was all pretty clever decisions in there, elegant solves to some of these challenging issues we used to have. So really, really do love the platform. I use it for my own. I mentioned that case for some internal reporting. There was the Mongo case where I'm bringing in this unstructured data, structuring it. So it's really nice to use as a platform for that. I also sometimes do some concurrency reporting, which you might do with queries on Snowflake itself, but I was looking at our models. We've got a lot of parallel model building going on a large amount of compute. So if I'm trying to understand a customer's environment and how busy and active it may be, I can use something like Snowflake to get down to even a per second amount of concurrency. There's some Cartesian joins in there. And if you're going to per second, like this is a lot of data if I'm looking at a large amount of time as well. But on an MPP database like Snowflake, where it's got all this power and compute to throw at it, it makes it pretty quick versus it's intolerable or can't be done on something like a Postgres. So I leverage it for that. And then I've got a lot of little samples of how to do things with Data Robot, integrate with us, and my go-to is Snowflake for that. So I've got scoring examples where you pull some data out of Snowflake and score it in AWS EMR in a Spark environment, and then write the results back to Snowflake. I've got examples where you just bring it to Data Robot through our batch interface, write it back to Snowflake. And we've got some simple GUI tools to make that an easy process as well. I saw the recently introduced external functions functionality, took advantage of that as well. So now I've got a function just right inside the Snowflake environment. I can call with SQL and predict whether someone, I did the standard hello world of machine learning environments, Titanic survival. So most of my examples are leveraging that. But just with SQL, you can call this function, calls out to Data Robot, says, is this person going to survive or not? What's the chance? Gets the results. And I had it use the streams and tasks before as well. So I built a little ETL pipeline around that and worked well. It's cool, fun to use, So some of that ETL process you can even have automated through those objects in Snowflake. And it was cool to see all that get put together. And fun to make these examples of things to do. So my customers, whether they're starting out on Snowflake or more advanced, there's a lot of cool things I can point them to have as examples to deploy models in their environment and use us both together.
Yeah. So you really covered a lot of different topics there. So you mentioned, you really like using, pointing your customers to Snowflake, especially for greenfield projects. When a customer has, pre-existing, it's brownfield. So there's already, some pieces or maybe different organizations within the company that have other solutions. What's your approach when there may be, different data silos within a company, and you need access to that data in order to solve some type of problem?
So I generally think when they're looking at a Snowflake in that instance, it's, it might be making a first data warehouse. It might be consolidating and hopefully retiring some old systems. But I would say they're probably looking because they're having some creaky problems on these older systems. And Snowflake makes it really easy to even just try out the software, right? You guys give credits. And I would just encourage people to do, a simple proof of concept, take something they're working on that they know is kind of challenging. Certainly, I've had experiences with people working in data warehouses where, this query takes 10 minutes, this query takes 45, this query takes 6 hours, or this query doesn't finish. And you can load them into an MPP environment and things start moving a lot quicker. But even then, all the MPP environments are not the same. So these are massively parallel processing databases. And examples might be Netezza and Teradata, Oracle Exadata, Amazon Redshift. But they're kind of philosophically different how all of them were made. So an example I might give is on Redshift, there's a lot more complexity in using the platform. So when I want to make a table in Snowflake, and I like optimizing stuff too. So I like tweaking things, but there's a point where it's not worth my time to tweak things. So, the thing is, you can make a table in many of these platforms where you can say, well, I want a row table or a column sort table. I want it to be compressed or not. On the individual columns, you can say whether you want them to be compressed and even the algorithm you would use. And I think, probably some computer scientists building this thought it'd be super cool, but in the real world, you just want to load the data and go, right? I've got, a gig of loan data here. I want to load it and start playing with it. And I just want it to be simple and fast and easy. And that's something where both Netezza and Snowflake kind of looked around at the time and said, what's the best hardware we have available to accomplish something like this? And, from the ground up, build something new. And Snowflake's done it with all this cloud native available, technology. And it's just a really nice solution to work on that solves a lot of problems in the older systems as well.
My understanding is that you're part of the Data Superheroes program here at Snowflake. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, in that, and how do people get involved in the community here?
Yeah, so I was playing with Snowflake a couple of years ago, and then found that there was the Snowflake Live community site. So started hanging out there, and I had some questions of my own. It was very nice to have both Snowflake employees as well as just fellow developers out there taking a look to see what's interesting going on or what knowledge people could share. So and then I started looking for questions myself that I could answer as well. So it's just a great place to go and learn about things, share knowledge, and it's just and it's kind of fun because it's a little bit gamified, so you can earn points with your knowledge as well. And I really recommend people take a look at the Snowflake community and participate in it as well. It's a great resource, and also your documentation's been pretty fantastic as well. I'll also say.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I always, me personally as a developer, documentation is pretty key to being able to build on top of any type of platform. So what are some areas, if somebody's looking to learn more, about the data space, some of the stuff that you work on, for example, ML and things like that, what are some good resources to point people to?
Yeah, so we also have a community ourselves. So That's a great place. That's where you can go and see some of the articles I've written that are integrating Snowflake with Data Robot as well. But we similarly have a free trial, and you can work with a Snowflake trial as well and connect those systems. So if you just Google Data Robot and AI trial, you'll be able to sign up for our platform as well. And there's different tracks in there. So if you're a data scientist, you can choose one track. If you're a business analyst, you can choose another. You can certainly do both. They'll walk you through use cases, give you data sets, take you through using Data Robot from loading the data to evaluating the models, deploying a model, scoring data through a model, integrating with Snowflake as well. So it's a great tool, great resource, and really recommend people check that out.
That's awesome. So how can people follow you online?
So probably the best way would be on LinkedIn. I'm most active there. I am also on these forums under the name Do You Even Data? I have a website with that as well, though I pretty lazily post to that blog these days. If I'm making something interesting, it typically will end up, especially if it's Snowflake and Data Robot related, it's going to end up on our community sites, where you can also find me as Do You Even Data as well.
Well, great. Well, hey, Mike, thank you very much for joining me today on the show Behind the Data Cloud. I'm Daniel Myers, host, developer relations here at Snowflake.